Can you hear me? Okay.
All right. Yep. We can hear you.
I wonder if, can you see me?
Yep. We can see you too.
I wonder, is it too dark here, you think, or should I turn the light on? Am I
No,
I can't tell if I'm.
we're pretty good. Yeah. This is Sam Vincent. Thank you for doing this. Yeah. Everything looks good on our end.
Because I can turn the light on here a little bit, but here, I'm going to turn it on and you tell me.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Is there a difference?
No, not really much of a difference. Whichever you're more comfortable with.
I'll turn it off then.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Trevor.
Oh man. What's your name again?
Sam Vincent.
Sam Vincent. Okay, you're the teacher?
Yep. I am. Yep. So we have about 35 students or so watching you, and then there may be a few who are doing the class virtually that may log in here.
Sure.
That we're excited. Last week we studied the Triple Crown races and Triple Crown horses, but in general, we don't know a lot about horse racing. We're not a huge horse racing community.
That's why you got me.
Yeah, right. So what we were hoping, if you're open to it, is maybe you talk for like 5 or 10 minutes about your career and just yourself, and then maybe some of the kids could ask questions if that would work.
That will work fine.
So you take it away whenever you want.
Okay, let's start up. Everybody's on?
Yeah. So you can't see them, and I'm going to pass around the computer when they ask questions, but we got about 35 kids here listening in, and then a few more may enter the chat here. But basically, you got about 35 kids.
Oh, good. Okay, my name is Bob Baffert, and I'm a thoroughbred racehorse trainer. And I grew up in Nogales, Arizona, which is in the border town of Tucson, Arizona. I went to the University of Arizona. But a lot of people ask me, how did you get in racing? That's the first thing people want to know. And the reason I got in racing is because my father, I grew up on a ranch. We had cattle and we had a chicken business. And so, and he had a couple quarter horse mares that he bought. And quarter horses, for some of you that are not familiar with it, they're the horses that run like a quarter of a mile, 350 yards. They have a big race called the All-American Futurities. That's in Ruidoso, New Mexico. It was the first $1 million race in quarter horse racing, where the winner gets $1 million. So, the dream of that, thinking, wow, what you imagine back in the 50s, 60s, if you could win a race and earn $1 million, it would change your life. That was the big dream. So my father had a couple of quarter horse mares, and somebody told him, you know what, they're bred. You could actually breed them, and maybe they can be race horses. And so he bred a couple, and he sent a horse off to some trainer in Texas, I remember. And it won a couple races, just nothing really spectacular. And he just kept messing with it while he was raising 7 children. And so, and I was involved at the age of about 10, 11. We used to show cattle as a side thing. We'd go to the fairs, and we had black Angus cows, and I was in 4-H, and I learned how to, 4-H is something agricultural, because I grew up in Southern Arizona. And I remember I had a lamb when I was growing up, and I had steers. We showed steers, and we were really into that. And then the quarter horse sort of phase came along, and my father decided, I was like around 14 years old, and he decided, you know what, why don't I do this myself? And so he cut out, we had like 300 acres, and we'd grow hay in the summer for the cattle. So he cut out a little strip, like a track, and he decided, what if I do this ourselves? And so we used to run on the fair circuit there in Arizona. I mean, the purses weren't high, and that's where I got the bug of getting in the horse business. I started with my father. I was 14. I was a groom. We had one or two horses, and we raised them, and they weren't very good, but we were, and every year he decided he'd step it up, breed to a better stallion. One year we were breeding to a stallion that cost $200 or $300, and it wasn't. And then he went to $500, and then we got a couple decent horses, but that's how I got the bug. And eventually, then by the time I was 16, I wanted to be a jockey. We'd go to Los Alamitos for the summers, and we'd go to the races, and I just became a big fan. And we had a track called Relito, which was in Tucson. And that's where I sort of cut my teeth with racing. And I tried being a jockey for a couple of years, but I was too big and too heavy. I really enjoyed it. And but in racing, once you get the bug, it's hard to get rid of it. But I wanted to be a quarter horse trainer. After college, I promised my mother I would go to college. I graduated from the University of Arizona. I did a little training, sort of got burned out with it. Actually went back home. I was a substitute teacher for 1 year in Nogales, Arizona. And that's when I realized, this is too hard. That's hard work being a teacher, and I just wasn't cut out for that. And my mother was a school teacher and a principal, and that's why I, gravitated to that. But I was a substitute teacher, which is basically a babysitter for the day. But and then finally I got really good quarter horses in Arizona. Then I moved to Los Alamitos in Anaheim, California by Disneyland. And that's where I started training quarter horses, got really good quarter horses, and never did win that All-American. I ran second in it once, but I sort of got lost interest because I had some client that told me, why don't you try thoroughbreds? I was very successful in the quarter horses. And being that D. Wayne Lucas had done so well, he was a great quarter horse trainer and made the switch. So I thought, I'll give it a try. I'll give it 3 years. If I don't do well, I can always come back to quarter horse racing. And I just sort of got lucky. And my first horse I bought was named 30 Slews for $30,000. I went to Keeneland, bought him, and he ended up winning the Breeders' Cup Sprint. And I remember watching the first Breeders' Cup in November of, I forget what year that was. And it was, the Breeders' Cup is all different races, sprints and all that. It was so entertaining. I thought, wow, I could maybe do that and maybe win maybe a Breeders' Cup Sprint, a sprinter. It's easier to get a sprinter than it is a really good horse. But so I gave it a dab. I gave myself 3 years, and within 2 years, I started rolling decently. And I've always set goals for myself. I give myself 3 years. That's been my goal. I was going to go to California as a quarter horse trainer, give myself 3 years. If I make it, if I don't, I come back. I did the same thing with thoroughbred. If I can't make it in 3 years and get to the, to the top or close to it, then I'll go back. Because when I was trying to be a jockey, there was this guy by the name of Bobby Adair who he was my hero. He was a great jockey. He won my first $100,000 stake race in a quarter horse race. And I was a jockey. I rode a few in California, and he asked me one winter, says, "You coming out to Los Alamitos this summer?" And I said, "No." He says, "Why not?" "Because I don't think I'm good enough." And he told me, if you don't think you're good enough, you should quit. Because if you don't think you're one of the best, just quit. And I quit the next day. It was like the best advice. And I said, you know what, I'll be a trainer. And that's how I got started. And that's the way it just started with just a couple of horses. But it started out because my father, who loved horses and loved animals, he's the one that got me. But he had to raise kids. He couldn't be a trainer. So when at least I got to share it with him and my family through the years.
So this is going to be a simple question, yet hard, I think. The question that was asked the most by students when they brainstorm questions is basically just, how do you train a horse? And at any given time, how many horses are you training?
Well, horses they're athletes. They have to, and when I was training quarter horses, Sam, they don't have to train as hard because they're only going 350 yards straight away. It's a controlled runaway. Where a thoroughbred, he breaks out of the gate. You don't want to go too fast early, and then the last quarter of a mile you let them run. And so with quarter horses, you train them maybe every other day. You take them to the track, give them a light half-mile gallop. Where thoroughbreds, they need to train every day almost. It's like they're like endurance runners, like endurance. You want to get out there, and we train them. Usually we train them about a mile and 3/8 mile and a half every day gallop, jog gallop, whatever. And then once a week, we'll give them a quick breeze. We call it a breeze. We let them work it fast. They'll either go 3/8 of a mile, half a mile, 5/8, 3/4, depending on what stage of their training is. And so we start out slow. We bring them up. It's like, you just bring them up really slow, and they're developing. They're young. Most of the horses are 2 years old that I get. And once they can handle whatever they can handle, then because you don't want to overdo it, because you have to worry about injuries and things can happen. So there's a fine line there.
Another question going with that is, I thought this was an interesting one, of just kind of like with people, of there have to be days the horses don't feel like training or are kind of restless. How do you deal with those situations?
Well, what's very important with thoroughbred racing is you want your horse, like in a quarter horse, you want that horse really on edge. You want him just jumping out of his skin, because in quarter horse racing, the break is so important. Coming out of the starting gate, they have to blast out of there, and they just drop way down, and they get up to 45 miles an hour, like in 3 or 4 jumps. It's really, where a thoroughbred, the more you relax them, keep them calm, because you want him relaxed. You want him leaving the gate and getting like in a nice smooth stride, so they'll breathe. You want them to breathe easily. And so these horses, they're all different, Sam, and so we train them differently. And every horse, some horses, you have to do less. Sometimes less is better. And but if you have a nervous horse, you have to take your time with him. You don't want to. I've had horses, if they look like they're getting sour, you just back off. You freshen them up. I might just stop on them a little bit, get their mind right. But there are certain personality traits that we follow, and some horses, they get smart. They don't want to. They know, they don't want to do the same thing every day. So sometimes we'll change it up on them a little bit so they don't get bored.
All right, kind of building off that, then I'm going to open it up to the students. But how long does it take for you to know the different personalities of the horses and kind of what they can do and what they can't?
Well, I mean, some horses you can tell by their pedigree, their breeding. Some sire lines will throw nervous type horses, aggressive horses, speed horses, horses that come from off the pace. I usually deal in horses my horses that we buy we want speed. We're looking for horses that can run at least a mile. And I think I can train the rest of it. Like all my good horses most of the great horses are great milers, that they just carry their speed. And so that's what I look for.
All right. So this question is from Gavin, one of my students. He wondered if you have a favorite horse that you've trained or one that you feel the closest with.
Well, Gavin, I've trained a lot of nice. I've been really blessed to train really good horses. I've had some favorite quarter horses. I've had champions. Silver Charm was probably a horse that I won my first Kentucky Derby with Silver Charm. And, he was a noble horse. He wasn't really bred that well, only gave 80,000 for him. His pedigree said nothing. He was just an overachiever, but he was so gutty that when a horse would come up to him, he would not let him pass. He was just so tough. He was competitive, and he lost the Triple Crown because he didn't see the horse coming. Matter of fact, the horse went way out to get away from him because he knew if he came up to him, he would never let him pass. It was unfortunate. Silver Charm never saw him. He could have won the Triple Crown, but my all-time favorite would be American Pharaoh, because not only was he a brilliant racehorse, but he was probably the nicest, sweetest temperament you'll ever see around in the barn area. Most of those horses that I've had, they can be aggressive and they might, like a horse like Justify, he'll give you like 3 seconds and then they're tough. They'll want to bite you or they're just aggressive, and they're athletes. They're like football players, they just right before a game, they're not going to be real sweet because they are we train them to their top performance. So we have them just on edge. But American Pharoah, he was the sweetest horse, but he got on the racetrack, he turned into this machine. And he really, going through the Triple Crown with him and winning the Triple Crown after 37 years was not only great, but everybody came back to the barn. He was just, all he wanted was a carrot. That's all he wanted, and just sweetness, and never would try to bite anybody. And to this day, when you go to Lexington, Kentucky, if you go to Coolmore, he's still the favorite there because he's just sweet. He's just a nice, kind horse, and a lot of his foals are the same way. Had a beautiful mind.
About American Pharoah, I had a few students while we were waiting for you. Is that a picture of American Pharoah behind you?
It sure is.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to see other questions students have. All right. What's the emotion like whenever you finally won the Kentucky Derby? Or last week we really studied the Triple Crown races and horses. Or when you won the Triple Crown, what is that emotion, a moment like?
Well, the emotions are, I remember, they're different. I remember my emotion when I won my first race as a jockey. I was in Flagstaff, Arizona. And it was like when I won my first race, it was like my third mount. I felt like I just over the moon. And then when I won I won the Champion of Champions, 1986 with a quarter horse, which was our big race in Los Alamitos. It was like over the top. And when I went to the Derby in 1996 with Cavanier, that was my first Derby, and I sort of had a long shot. And I thought he won, but I got beat like an inch right on the wire. And I really thought I'd won. I remember that emotion. And then when they hung the number up, it was like just devastating. But I told everybody, I know what it feels like to win the Derby for about 5 minutes, because that's how long it took to put the number up. But I think Silver Charm, when he won it, the emotion is just, you're not really, for the Kentucky Derby, you're not really mentally ready for it. And all of a sudden, you can go in there thinking, yeah, I'm going to win the Derby. But I've always been a kind of person that I don't try to get too excited. I always have the term, expect the worst, hope for the best attitude, or you'll go crazy, because we're going to lose. We lose a lot more than we win. You're lucky if you win 18% out of the time. So you're going to get beat so many times. So I prepare myself. But then when you have horses like American Pharoah and these other horses, I remember Point Given, he was supposed to win. He got beat. That was, horrible. But now it's almost like when you go in there with a horse like Justify, American Pharoah, you just feel more pressure, like if he doesn't win. And when they do win, it's like, I'm excited, but it's almost like a relief that he won the race. It's like Tom Brady, when he throws that pass, well, you expect that guy better catch it, And so it's a different kind of emotion now, but the Triple Crown was really emotional for me because unfortunately my parents had passed. They didn't see me do it. And it was very emotional for me, and they had just passed a year before. And so I figured, they were part of it, but it was something that, it's about history. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about the jockey. It was about the horse. The Triple Crown is all about the horse. The Derby is about the owners and the jockey and the trainer and the excitement of it, the pageantry of the Kentucky Derby. It's the best race. I mean, I could win the Derby and I'll just go home. I'm fine. I don't have to run in the other races, but the Kentucky Derby is the one.
All right, you're cutting in and out a little bit. We're gonna fix it on our end. But so the Kentucky Derby is your favorite of the 3 Triple Crown races?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the Kentucky Derby is like, it's like the Super Bowl. It's our Super Bowl, and so it's one of those races that it's just people know about. I've never had anybody ask me when I say I'm a horse trainer. They've never asked me if I've won the Preakness or the Belmont. I said, have you ever run in the Kentucky Derby? And I mostly say, yeah. Oh, really? Have you won it? Yeah, won it a few times, but it's like, it's one of those things where when I was growing up, the Kentucky Derby was the only race we watched the whole year. It was on television. The Kentucky Derby was since I was about, 14, 15 years old, 16.
Um, we're trying to figure out. We can see you, but the audio is going in and out a little bit.
Yeah, because you were cutting out. I think it's on your end.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to see what's going on.
Tell the guy behind you to turn off his computer. You're frozen. There you are. You're back.
I think it's our internet's going in and out. Um,
Yeah, you keep freezing up.
okay, hold on.
You're freezing.
Yeah.
Do you think it's your internet, or could it be mine? Maybe.
No, I think it's us, but do you hear me now?
I hear it perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Hopefully it's fixed. We'll just have to modify as we go. My students had a good question of how do you and the owner select what jockey should be on a particular horse?
Well, what I do is I try to pick the rider that sort of fits the style of the horse. There's some jockeys that are really good on the front end, on the lead, or off the pace. But I like to use jockeys that I've had a lot of luck with. Uh, some guys really ride well for me. Some guys get nervous, they get intimidated. Um, and so I think it's sort of like, the quarterback versus his receivers. Some receivers like to play with certain quarterbacks, and so it's sort of like that.
So for the kids, because we've been kind of studying it, here in a few weeks when the Kentucky Derby happens, do you have any horses racing in a few weeks at the Kentucky Derby?
Well, I have one for sure. His name is Medina Spirit. And unfortunately, I had the early favorite, Life is Good, and he got injured a few weeks ago. It was pretty, it was very minor, but the timing was bad, and he would have been the heavy favorite, really superior horse. And I have another horse called Concert Tour, who just ran last week in the Arkansas Derby, but he just didn't run his race, and I don't know why. So we're sort of on the fence with him. We're not sure if we're going to run him or just wait for the Preakness stakes. But we were really disappointed in his run. He didn't bring his A game, and you just hate going in the Derby with a horse if you think maybe he's not, because it's a mile and a quarter, and there's 20 horses. It's really hard on him. And so everything's got to be just perfect. Everything's got to go perfect. And you want to go into the Derby, with your horse, just in prime shape. So you'd hate to take my horse was going to be one of the second favorites. but he took a step forward. You want to keep moving forward. So I don't know what it was. He came out of it fine, but he was my best chance. But now Medina Spirit is going to be sort of a long shot. He runs second to all these horses, but you know, I don't know if he can win it, but maybe he'll get a piece of it. You don't know, but
how do you know a horse is ready to run, and kind of when, like, what age would a horse have their first race normally?
well, we're trying to get them the races when they're 2 years old, and a lot of them don't run till three. Justified didn't run till three because he had they get little issues. We call them baby issues. They get little. Um, they might get like shins. Their shins get sore. You have to back off, let them develop a little bit. Some horses develop really early, and some takes them a little bit longer. So we let them develop at their own pace. Some come around early. A lot of the good horses come around early. I've had horses like Silver Charm. He came around early. He never had an issue. His health was good all those years. Never got sick. A lot of the good ones, they never get sick. Like Pharaoh, never got sick. He had a little issue as a 2-year-old. Had to stop on him. He was champion 2-year-old, but he missed the Breeders' Cup. And so, little things happen. So a lot of it is timing. And the Derby, they bring themselves to the Derby. You can't really push them into it. Let them develop. And if they're ready that during that period, you're fine. Last year, September was sort of a blessing in disguise for Authentic because he was a late foal. It gave him a chance to develop. And I actually like the idea of the Derby in September because it's sort of even though the first Saturday in May is, that's the Derby, it's legendary, but so a lot of them, it takes them a little bit longer to develop.
So for you personally, what is Derby Day like on a given day for you? Just kind of the routine of that day and the emotions of that day for you.
Well, I can be, when there's a lot of people, last year it was sort of quiet. There was really nobody there. It's usually very hectic. And for me, it's hectic because I think Derby Days, that's the only time that I'm actually a celebrity for the day. Everybody wants to get their pictures taken, and we want to be nice to everybody and cordial, and but at the same time you're working. It was like I was talking to Bill Belichick. He's a friend, and I said, "You imagine if you were at the sideline at the NFL Super Bowl, and while you were calling plays, somebody wanted to take a selfie with you on the sidelines. You would go crazy." But that's what it's like, and I don't want to be rude to people, and I try to, if I can, but if it's very hectic, and but we're nervous. We're thinking about the race. I'm always thinking what could go wrong. Make sure everybody knows their job. Usually we have other horses running that day, so it keeps me preoccupied. But it's just the waiting game, just to wait, just like anything, just waiting you can't wait until you put a saddle on that horse.
All right, bridging off of that question, because while we don't know horse racing as well, I know lots and lots of my students are big football fans. What is Bill Belichick like as a friend?
Bill, when I talked to him, he was at the races and he was just nice and relaxed, and we didn't talk about football or anything, and he was just there to enjoy himself and kick back with his friends, and he's very nice guy, very quiet, just totally the different one that we see. You know, when you can see when he's a coach, he's all business focused. But he's just hanging there with the guys, just relaxing, wanting to know about horses. And, when you get those guys away from their, like Coach Calipari, I've gotten to know him pretty well. He's a character. And he was with us and Bill Belichick was with us for the Justify Triple Crown. He was there for the Preakness and the Belmont, and having dinner with him. But he's just totally very down to earth kind of guy, you know, nothing really, just quiet, you know, just not really, you know, it's, you know, when I first met him, I was a little bit like, wow, there's Bill Belichick, but he's a very nice man.
Um,
Are we frozen?
how about now?
I heard a little bit there. I don't, I don't hear anything.
All right. I think I think I figured out the problem, but not totally sure on that. Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now.
Okay. All right. One of the questions that a student had that was, I thought, pretty good was, do you think in the success of a horse, is it more genetics or is it more the training that goes into it, or is it kind of a 50-50 split?
No, it's definitely genetics. It's I mean, once in a while you might get a horse like Silver Charm. You'll get the odd horse that really genetic. It doesn't make sense. Why is this horse, you know, freaky? You know, it's but genetics comes through. But a lot of the good horses, you know, American Pharoah, he was by Pioneer the Now, who I trained. He ran second in the Derby. He was a nice horse, but he wasn't like a freak of nature or anything like that. And American Pharoah, the bottom side wasn't really strong, you know, and he just sometimes you get, we call them just freaky type horses. It's just like I think a lot of it is, you know, there's got to be some genetics. You know, Seattle Slew wasn't bred that well, but he was a great racehorse and a great sire. Secretariat was bred very well, was a great, one of the greatest racehorses, but he really didn't, he never could throw a really super great, he never replicated himself, you know, and some sires, they throw really good horses. So it's hard to say, but it's mostly, I'd give it genetics are probably 80%.
So last week we looked at a lot about Secretariat. Do you see a horse that do you think a horse could break the records that Secretary has at the Triple Crown races, or do you think those are kind of out there and not attainable?
No, that'll never be attainable again because in those days, Sam, the same horses ran in the Derby, in the Preakness, and the Belmont. And like if all the same horses would have run in the Derby, in the Preakness, and the Belmont, he would have won by 25 lengths because they get tired and you know it's the same horses. But now what they do, people, is that a phone going on there? What people do is if they run the Derby, they skip the Preakness and they freshen their horses up and they load up on you at Belmont. So you get a whole new different crop. Did you get that?
So kind of going with yeah, we're going in and out a little bit, but we're getting most of it. I think it's my end. When I first saw American Pharoah and Justify, did you know that they were different, that they could win the Triple Crown, or is it something that over time you discovered?
You know, I knew that American Pharoah, when I brought him back as a 3-year-old, we knew he was something really special. He had that. And so when I brought him back, he won the Rebel Stakes. And when he won the Arkansas Derby, I knew right there, and there could be my horse for the Triple Crown. And Justify, when he his second race, I knew he could really run. And his second race, the way he won it, I knew he was superior. And but I really wasn't thinking Triple Crown with him until he won the Kentucky Derby. I was just trying to get him to the Kentucky Derby.
All right. Hold on 1 second. So one of my students, what horse that you've trained, do you think is the was most talented, and then maybe kind of like your second and third most talented horses that you've trained?
I get asked that a lot, and that's a tough question because they're all talented in a certain way. I mean, I think American Pharaoh uh, and Justify, they were just two brilliant horses. Going a mile and a quarter, I had a horse called Arrogate, who was just unbelievable. And he was he won the Travers, broke a track record. And the older he got, he missed the Derby and the Preakness and the Belmont. And I think Arrogate, Point Given was another horse that was a really top horse. I've had a horse like Midnight Loot was a tremendous sprinter. I've had so many. It's hard to say, it's hard to say, well, if you had to take one to train, it's hard to say, they were superior horses, but they were different. They had different styles. They ran differently. I'd love to have an American Pharaoh every year. That'd be nice. But or a Justify or an Arrogate. It's like, you've got one horse. You get, usually a trainer will be lucky if he gets one horse like that. And I've gotten horses, Arrogate, uh, American Pharaoh, Justify, and Authentic last year was just getting better and better. He was coming around. So that's a tough question. It's like which child do you love more? But they're all different. But they were superior. One thing they had in common, they were superior. They were just so much better than the rest of the horses.
Anybody else got a question right now? As a trainer, do you have much to do with the nutrition aspects for the horse, or is it more design the workouts?
No, nutrition, we feed, they're always working on it. We feed certain feeds that a lot of, that have little certain fats in it, proteins. Like during the winter, we'll feed them probably more starchy, more fatty during when it's cold, because they're using up energy. And then when the summer comes along, when it gets hot, we'll change up the diet a little bit. We give them full hay. They need full hay because they're grazing animals. They want to graze all day and all night. So they usually have a free choice of hay, alfalfa or Timothy hay, it's called, and they can graze all day on that. And we feed them twice a day. We feed them in the morning and at night.
This is one just I'm kind of interested in. Is there much camaraderie, trainers and owners, or because there's so much, is it more kind of rivalries that trainers and owners in horse racing?
You know what? I think a lot of owners, they get to know each other. You meet a lot of, I've met really a lot of neat people that, owners of other horses. It's a little competition. I think trainers are probably like chess players, they're always, they don't want to show their hand. They're like coming in there and it's very competitive. I have a few friends that are trainers, but we really, I think we're so, it's 7 days a week. You're so caught up in your own work that I really, when I leave the racetrack, I try to leave my work at the track and just relax. But, I'm pretty tight with guys like Wayne Lucas, older guys, trainers that, to me, I really looked up to and I asked a lot of questions. When I first got in the business, I've always been a very curious kind of person. I think if you want it in life, you got to be very curious and ask questions. I remember when I came in, it was Charlie Whittingham, it was Laz Barrera, and they were older. They were, they'd already at the peak of their career. But I would ask them just everything I could. I just drained the information out of them so I could learn. What took them like 40 years to learn, I would learn like in a 15-minute conversation. And I'm still learning to this day. I'm a better trainer than I was 5 years ago. I've never felt like I really have it down pat. There's always, like maybe I could have done better. After every race, I'm hard on myself. What could I have done better? And we're coaches. We're basically coaches. And I'm sure every coach, after they get beat, you learn from your losses. And, you hear every coach, we could have done better in this area. I could have done better, and we're always trying to improve ourselves.
So this was a question from one of my virtual students. They wonder, do you have any things that you think horse racing could do to become bigger on a national stage of past the Kentucky Derby that is on NBC and lots of people watch, that you think horse racing could do to become a bigger, kind of more popular sport?
Well, they've been working on it. I know they focus more on the gambling part of it now, especially during the COVID. There's more people probably betting more money online now and people just quit going to the races because I think a lot of the pageantry is left. It was weekend racing and there's a lot of racing going on, a lot of tracks. So it's hard to get people to the racetrack, especially there's so much competition out there now. People that go to the fans that come to the racetrack, they're real fans. They love to see the horses. They want to see the horses up close. And, you got to bring the younger, younger people into, they're promoting to get the younger people in there because most of our great fans were older. They're just older people that their father took them. You talk to anybody at the racetrack, well, their father took them when they were like a little boy or a little girl, whatever. And now, people don't hardly do that anymore. And it's, we're getting more on television, which helps, but it's like anything, if people don't know the stars, they don't really get into it. Just like to me, like golf, I'll watch the Masters, but if I don't recognize any of the names, am I going to watch it? You know what I mean? If I see, Tiger Woods and I want to watch or whatever, but I think every sport, Sam, go through transition, and I think racing is going through a transition, like all our sports, where the names start to change. So you have to start accepting these new names, new jockeys, new trainers, and so, but they need to promote it. In our sport, we don't really promote our stars like we could. So because of the gambling aspect, and now with social media, you've got a lot of like these, with social media. Before, a disgruntled gambler could just be in a bar and say, oh, that jockey's this or that whatever. Now they can just put their opinion online, which, whether it's good or bad, it's like a lot of it's not good. But I think, we're trying to get our racing's trying to get our arms around the social media part of it. It just hasn't happened yet. And the tracks don't have the budgets like NFL or baseball to really go out there and push our sport. We don't have those kind of budgets. So we're sort of, so now they're concentrating more on the gambling end of it. Because they're on Derby Day, they handle like 150 million, which on a weekend here they'll handle $8 million. So it's just everybody's gambling on and these gamblers like the big pools, the gambling pools, because you can have a lot of people just bet names. Like you've gone to a Kentucky Derby party and they'll have pools and they'll grab a name. They'll just pick a name because I like that name. Like I'm going to take whatever, Charlie Brown over some American Pharoah because I got a friend named Charlie. Or, you know what I mean? It's just like on Derby Day, a lot of people just gamble on names.
After your horses compete in the Kentucky Preakness Belmont, how many more races do they normally do after that before you retire them?
Well, it depends on the horse. Like American Pharoah, we retired him after the Breeders' Cup, and because they'd already sold his breeding rights, and sometimes Sam, it doesn't, they unfortunately, they make more money in the breeding shed than they do racing horses. Like Pharoah, I forget how much money he made, but he uh, he might have made, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 million, whatever it was. But in the breeding shed, he was making 15 million a year, breeding mares. So you can't do that on the racetrack, and
It's a lot of money.
you're taking that chance. If you take them out there, what if they get beat? What if they get injured? And so that's a lot of pressure, and you have to insure these horses. You can only insure them for so much if something were to happen. So it's really risky. And a lot of people feel, well, that's what's wrong with the sport, that the stars don't keep running, but it's not that easy. Justify, unfortunately, he got injured after the Belmont, and I couldn't run him. We would have run him all through the year. And he's the one that they sold. Uh, they sold his breeding rights for like 65 million or something, some ridiculous, you know. Just like Secretariat, he was syndicated for 8 million at the time, which was just astronomical. And that's why he didn't run as a 4-year-old, because um, you just can't take that chance.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So once a horse retires, do usually the owners keep them, or do they sell them to someone else to breed them?
If they, what was the question again? I missed some of that.
Once a horse retires, does the same owner usually keep them, or do they sell them to someone else to breed them?
Yeah, it depends. If you have a mare, fillies or mares, sometimes the owners will breed them to a good horse and maybe sell them in an auction. A lot of them, they run it as a business. You get a mare, you can buy her if she wins a grade 1 or grade 2, and you breed her to a fancy stallion. You can get, you can buy mares. I've bought horses for people for 300, 400, 100,000, 700, and they win grade 1s, and you breed them to a top stallion, and you put them in the auction, and they'll bring $2-3 million. And that, with that money, they put it back in the business to keep going. But it's they run it like a business, and a lot of our good breeding mares, they go to Japan. Japan, they bought most of our grade 1 winners, and they go to Europe because they know America. It's all about speed. We raise the fastest horses and on dirt, and that's what they want. They want that brilliance, and you can only get that brilliance in America. That pedigree is here in America. Are we frozen? Oh. Okay, what happened there? Shit. Oh, I heard something.
There we go. Sorry about that. Our internet has gone in and out, so I apologize.
Well, a lot
and
of, it's all right. I'm here.
Yeah, and I know you got another meeting. Your wife said in about 10 minutes, but I hated to
We go a
just
little,
leave like that.
we go a little bit
Yeah.
longer.
So we kind of lost of the owners when they retire a horse. Do they normally sell them to a breeder or just breed them themselves?
Well, some of the owners, if they're breeders, if I train for farms, they'll breed them themselves, and sometimes they'll sell the offspring or might sell the mare. There's different ways. They run it like a business. You can, a lot of these mares, I'll buy these fillies, and if they win a grade one or win a big stake, and they breed them to a horse like Justify or a top stallion, then they'll put them in a cell in full and they'll sell them for like 1 million, 2 million, 1.5 million, whatever. And that's how they generate. That's how you keep it going, and so they can buy more horses to race. And so most of my clients, they run it as a business. It's a business to them, and it's a sport. We want to get the good horses, and not all of them turn out, but a lot of people. And some horses, if it's a gelding or a colt, and he's just not, he's not that talented, I usually give him away to people, and they'll make a riding horse out of them or something. And so, we've done a pretty good job of finding homes for horses that just don't work out. And so I think back in the day, we didn't do a very good job doing that, but now I think we're really on top of it now.
Anybody got? All right, I'm going to do 2 more questions if that's good with you.
Sure.
Okay. So you've been training for a while here in your career now. Are there any goals or things that you would really like to retire?
Well, I really haven't thought about retiring. I would like to stay in this business as long as I'm doing well, as long as, people still want me to train and I'm doing well. I love the horses. I like being around them. They have a way of just really, they're good for the mind. They're just very noble. And as long as I'm enjoying it and I'm still competitive, I'll keep going. But when I lose that interest, I like the big days of racing. I love training the people that I train for. I love my clients. They're not only their clients, but they're good friends of mine. And so it's fun to go to these big races. And when you get a good horse, Sam, it really brings. I've noticed when a good horse brings families together. I remember Silver Charm. It was just like a big family thing. Every big horse, you get to know people, you get to know their kids and everybody. And when you get a good horse, everybody comes out of the woodwork. And so so that's the beauty of the sport. I've met presidents. I met Muhammad Ali. I never thought I'd meet him. I met him at the Derby. He was like, I idolized him. And I've met really important people. And so it's a beautiful sport. And so unfortunately, we don't get to really show it off. The Derby is just an hour show, boom, you're gone, forget about it. It goes out of their minds. And even though we do have racing on TVG, Television Games Network, on, that goes continually every day. But it's one of those things where I'm enjoying it still, and as long as I'm competitive, I'm going to. I'm like Tom Brady, when I lose the itch, I'll quit.
Well, we've had a few other guest speakers, and we kind of have finished with this. We've got a lot of juniors and lots of seniors in this class. If you could give any life advice as they're going off to college or to their careers, what would that be?
I would say, it took me a while to find something that I really wanted to do. Matter of fact, I wasn't until I was 26 years old that I realized what I wanted to really, really do. 26, 27. And you find something you want to do, but you want to be the best at it, or be the best at it. But always stay curious. Always ask questions. And the only way you're going to get ahead is you got to ask questions. You got to, and even if they're stupid questions, just always try to, how can I be better at it? What could I do? But if you find something, I got lucky and found something that I love to do, even though it can be, racing can make you better when you're competing in sports like this, because of the losses. And I mean, every year there's a part of my life where I feel maybe I should have been a farmer, or I should have done something else. You know what I mean? You can get to those points in whatever you do. Every year I feel a low spot, like, you know what, maybe I'll do something else. This is aggravating. But then about a week or two later, some horse pops up and you go, I'm good. But you just want to focus on something that would really will keep your interest. And then once you find it, just be, like I said, just find out more about all you can about it to make yourself better. How can I be the best at it? And that's what I've done. I never thought I was going to be in the Kentucky Derby. When I tried thoroughbreds, I never thought Kentucky Derby. I just wanted to win a race, maybe. And so I gave myself 3 years and it worked. And here I am.
Well, thank you so much. Sorry about the technical difficulties. Our internet has gone in and out a little bit, but we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And selfishly, I might be in touch for next year, maybe talking to my next group of students that I have.
Sure. No, anytime, Sam.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, and good luck at the Kentucky Derby here in a few weeks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Goodbye.